Welcome back to MCAS Boot Camp, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about writing effective thesis statements. So when I think about a thesis statement, I first need to ask myself the question, what exactly is a thesis statement? Well, I found a pretty good definition, so let's start there and take a look. A thesis statement clearly identifies the topic being discussed, includes points discussed in the paper, so your main points, and is written for a specific audience. Your thesis statement belongs at the end of your first paragraph, also known as your introduction or your introductory paragraph. Use it to generate interest in your topic and encourage the audience to continue reading. So, okay, talks about the topic, all the points that are being discussed in the paper, and written for a specific audience. That is really helpful. So now when I go back here, I'm also going to unpack and think about the parts of an effective thesis statement, specifically on the ELA MCAS long composition. So in order to write an effective thesis statement, I need to do a few things. First, I need to identify the parts of the prompt because all of these prompts have more than one part. I need to turn the prompt into a purpose question. And we're going to practice that. I need to brainstorm and choose a book that I can use to answer the thesis statement. Remember, when you're writing the long composition, you're not going to have the book or text with you, so you need to remember it from memory. So I want to choose a book or a story that I know well. And you will write a thesis that meets the following criteria. Includes all parts of the prompt accurately, includes title, author, and genre of the book, is arguable, that means someone can disagree with it, and articulates a clear plan for how you will prove your argument is correct. So what exactly are we talking about here? Let's take a look at an example prompt that has been used in the MCAS before so that we can do this in a little more detail. So here's the example prompt. Works of literature often feature characters who overcome hardship and misfortune. From a work of literature you have read in or out of school, select a character who overcomes hardship and misfortune. In a well-developed composition, explain how the character overcomes adversity or challenges and why this success is important to the work of literature. All right, so step one, we need to identify the parts of the prompt. And it seems to me that there are a few different parts. So it starts here, from a work of literature, select a character who overcomes hardship and misfortune. That's part one. First, I need to pick a character to whom this is relevant. So it can't just be any character, it needs to be one who overcame challenges. Next, explain how the character overcomes adversity or challenges. So that's the second part. First, you have to identify the challenges and a character who faced them. Then you have to explain how the character overcame them. That's part two. And then the last part, explain why this success is important to the work of literature. So it can't just be a character who overcame misfortune. It needs to be, but it has to be more. It also has to be one that you can explain well how they overcame those misfortunes. And lastly, their success needs to be really important to the work as a whole. So you're probably thinking about someone who was a main character, one of the protagonists maybe. That's what I'm thinking to myself. It needs to be really significant. It can't just be a tiny detail in the book. Okay, so I am going to turn each of these into a writing prompt. So what are they asking me? They're asking me to please select a character. Okay, I'm gonna change this. Can I select a character who overcomes hardship and misfortune? That's one purpose question. The next one is related to what we see in green. Can I explain how the character overcomes adversity? And that's my next purpose question. And the last one from the pink color is, can I explain why this success is important to the work of literature? So this has to, again, be a character who has a significant presence in the book or work of literature. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain why it's important to the overall story. Okay, now you would use those questions to write your thesis. So let's look at an example thesis. We'll read it together. Taylor Markham, one of the main characters from Jellicoe Road by Melinda Marchetta, is able to overcome hardship and misfortune because she decides actively trying to find her family is more important than never knowing who she is and allows her to explore her identity in new ways. This ability to overcome hardship affects the work as a whole because her journey brings her in touch with new people who show her that it is possible to love again. So now I'm looking at this and I am going to color code it based on my 3 questions above that I color coded in yellow, green, and purple. Okay, so first is, can I identify a character who overcomes hardship and misfortune? So Taylor Markham is the name of the character, and we see here that we turn the prompt around into a statement that Taylor Markham is able to overcome hardship and misfortune. Okay, so yes, this part aligns with the yellow purpose question above. So I do have a character, and this character did overcome hardship and misfortune. Now the next question in green is, how did the character overcome adversity? Well, let's keep reading. Because she decides, so she makes a decision, that's part of the how. Actively trying to find her family is more important than never knowing who she is, and allows her to explore her identity in new ways. Okay, so how she did it, she made this decision to take action to find her family. That answers the question of how did she do it. It aligns to the piece in green. Now, lastly, why is this important to the work of literature? Well, let's see here. Let's keep reading. This ability to overcome hardship affects the work as a whole. That's a key statement right there. That tips me that we're probably going to answer the 3rd purpose question, because her journey brings her in touch with new people to show her that it is possible to love again. So those key words are included in this part, and it does align to the pink purpose question, and it does answer why Taylor Markham's overcoming of hardship is important to the work of literature as a whole. So now we're going to practice one together. So here's a new prompt. Let's read this one together. Often in works of literature, a character's life is affected by a single act or mistake. From a work of literature you have read in and out of school, select a character whose life is affected by a single act or mistake. In a well-developed composition, identify the character, describe how he or she is affected by a single act or mistake, and explain how the character's experience relates to the work as a whole. Okay, so the 3 parts here, and again, I'm going to highlight. So first is select a character whose life is affected by a single act or mistake. I'm going to highlight that one in yellow again. And then in a well-developed composition, identify the character, describe how he or she is affected by the mistake. That's the second part. So I've already identified. Now I'm going to describe how they're affected by the mistake and explain how the character's experience relates to the work as a whole. So again, I need to think about a character who has a significant presence in the work of literature because it needs to tie to the work as a whole. So probably a main character or protagonist. Those are my 3 parts, and I can turn those into questions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here are my 3 questions. Can I select a character whose life is affected by a single act or a mistake? Can I describe how he or she is affected by the single act or mistake? And can I explain how the character's experience relates to the work as a whole? All right, now that I know my questions, I'm going to turn them into a prompt, into a thesis. And I'm going to use the book that I used before when I was doing my brainstorming in my graphic organizer. So before I used The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And we identified that Katniss is one of the protagonists or main characters. So I'm actually going to write about her because her experience is impacted, the whole book is impacted by her decision to take the place of her sister Prim in the Hunger Games. So that was not a mistake. Katniss would not see that as a mistake, but it was a decision that impacted the rest of the work as a whole. So I'm going to write about that. So I'm going to start again with making sure that I name the title and the author. So Katniss is a character, Everdeen in The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I'm going to underline this title of the book. Okay. Is affected by her single act of choosing to take her sister Prim's place in the Hunger Games. Okay, so I already answered the first question here, right? I can check that off. I selected a character whose life is affected by a single a character whose life is, I missed some words there. Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins is a character whose life is affected by her single act of choosing to take her sister Prim's place in the Hunger Games. Now, can I describe how she is affected by that single act? Katniss's life is affected by that single act because she saves her sister's life and becomes a national hero in the districts. Now, you may not have read The Hunger Games. Don't worry about it, but this is the reason why her life is affected by that single act. Next, can I explain how the character's experience relates to the work as a whole? So Katniss's experience relates to the work as a whole because she changes how the Hunger Games rules work and helps to bring hope to people in the districts who had not had hope for a long time. So Katniss has a major impact on the Hunger Games because she affects how the Hunger Games function, and this is a major event in the life of the citizens of Panem in the book. And she also brings hope to people in the districts. So I have described how she is affected now by that act, and I've explained how it relates to the work as a whole. So I've done all three of those. I'm going to highlight them here so you can see it here too. This answers the first part of the prompt. This answers the second part of the prompt. And this last piece answers the third part of the prompt. Now we're going to be doing some practice on this in partners and breakout rooms, and we're going to be using the books or stories that you all prepared in your graphic organizers last week. So you should pick the story that you are familiar with. It does not have to be their Hunger Games, and you're going to do the same practice that I just did. Let's see how you do.